All right.
We'll tell you where you're going.
Let's jump on in. Okay, so we left off talking on Monday. Pretty productive conversation about like what are the practical differences on the ground out of the Wilderness Act between something like a national recreation area where you got a bunch of four-wheeling on purpose, you got a couple of hundred different hunting compartments in a single national recreation area typically. You got equestrian use, so trail riding on horses, you got stealth camping, you got developed area camping, like full RV hookups, and usually, a couple of those like halfway in the middle campgrounds where you like
RV
pull your
park.
car in, but not necessarily have like the full pull-through hookups with your 80-foot Greyhound RV. And then on the other end of that spectrum, intuitively, we have this idea of, okay, so a wilderness area is going to be run by literally the same agencies: Bureau of Land Management, Park Service, Forest Service, etc.
I told you it'd show
But
up.
it's gonna be not. But it's gonna be not a whole lot of that development. None of those hookups, none of those pull-throughs. If there are roads there, we're either gonna let trees like grow up through them, or pull out the roads and let it renaturalize, or actively do that restoration ecology.
Do you talk about like abandoned roads, like down in Pennsylvania, or even Hollywood or Ohio, where
Yeah.
contaminated,
Yep.
they're just letting them, like even Chernobyl, for example, like outside the U.S.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool.
And that's by design. The idea that we need this whole range of stuff, and that's a legitimate thing, that's perfectly okay. We file that under an old idea called the Recreation Opportunity Spectrum, ROS. So this is like a whole bunch of work in like the 80s and 90s. So like the previous generation of foresters to me, and
So the World War II guys?
more like the Gen Xers. Yeah. They're coming up with this, they're coming up hard against the demand for, active, intensive, motorized, fossil fuel powered recreation, and also rapidly growing demand for these young new wilderness areas, right? The ones, Shawnee National Forest picks up wilderness real late in the game. And so just as like your parents are coming of age kind of thing, maybe my parents, they're having to use this and define a whole bunch of spectra, not just development. But yeah, so a national recreation area can be urban proximate. Like close enough to suburbia that it's no thing at all to trailer your buggy over there and go wall climbing, like not even just on a weekend, but like if you got a half day at work, you know where you're spending the other half. Most wilderness areas, on the other hand, it's a car ride or a plane trip. John?
What about Gettysburg? Does that fall under that? Because it's a historical area, but it's also a recreational area too, to go and learn.
Fair enough. Yeah. So this would be on a different spectrum for ROS. And ROS has, golly, there are dozens or hundreds of them, because there wasn't a single standardized set. Because the folks who were sort of developing this were like, we're not able to, as several people, not able to get like all of the different varieties in there. We're going to leave it open and flexible, so everybody made their own spectra. So one of them would be so like active recreation activities, when we think of hiking, biking, stuff like that, versus cultural, historic, environmental, and as one function of historic interpretation, we have military history, because that's also the civic and public history of the United States in our case. The Civil Revolutionary War battles before that. Okay? So, we have a bunch of different spectra. Wilderness and rec areas kind of split pretty clearly on the development range or spectrum. And one key correlate or one key ingredient of that is with wilderness, generally speaking, we're trying to not like get in everybody's face and make everybody sign up for a permit and stuff like that, except for in certain relatively high demand wilderness areas like Denali National Park in south central Alaska, along the Alaska range. They have to kind of schedule who's going when and where in those wilderness compartments. It's a couple of million acres, so the interior most section, imagine just like the inner middle part of it being a couple million acres, and then there's more out beyond that. That's all chopped up into a whole bunch of 5 to 20,000 acre parcels, basically. And so in that particular case, it's a little bit unique. It's Alaska, they're different. They disperse people actively by having everybody get a permit. You come into the backcountry office, you show them your the car battery you're going to carry to power your electric fence. You have a chat with the rangers about firearms, bear spray, all that stuff, bear safety. And then you pick kind of an itinerary. So this compartment's going to be totally open. You can reserve that one. And then 2 days to wander through that 20,000 acres and then flip over the ridge line into the backside. 3 days in there and then come back over the ridge, out a third one, and then back out to the road. And that's your week-long trip. That's about all you can carry in the summer with all that extra bear gear. So the rest of the wilderness areas are trying to disperse not actively. That is, at Shawnee National Forest, if you want to go to like Bald Knob or Clear Creek Wilderness over on the west side of the Shawnee over there, it's a real pretty area, and it's two tiny wilderness areas stuck right next to each other. They're effectively one. And the demand is low enough for people backpacking or doing the river-to-river trail through there along the Godwin Trail. You can just kind of show up. And that sounds pretty good to a lot of people. Like, that's kind of one of the points of having wilderness in the first place. You don't have to go talk to Ranger Rick if you want to just get out there. Yeah, go disappear for a couple of days and experience some solitude. So the dispersal can be active or passive. And in a low-use, low-demand situation like the Shawnee, we don't have any major cities real close to it, so it's not like a line of cars parked outside of the 3-car parking lots they have at each end of those two. Out by Inspiration Point and then up by Bald Knob. It's just, you might see another car there. You might see somebody else along the trails. Generally, we don't when we go there for backpacking on this class. We're also going in kind of the off-season. Yeah.
So, when we were in Zion for summer camp, and we went backpacking,
yeah,
we went into the wilderness area up behind the major park of Zion.
Yep.
And in that area, it seems like most of the different trails you could possibly do all converge at this one set. Like, I don't have the map pulled up. But they have the campsites that are all kind of in the same little area, close to that spring where the different streams converge and turn into that river.
The Virgin River? That's the one.
I say, but that was all wilderness area, and it's dispersed in the sense where you have to go get a permit and check in with the rangers before you do that. But then in the same case, it's not as dispersed because where we camped with our summer camp group, on the opposite side of the river, there was 4 dudes also camping over there that night.
Yes.
So is that just to focus the use in that one single area so that you're not having a bunch of people and other things like that inside of the entire wilderness area? Or?
That's an excellent question. And to answer that, we have to take a look at it on the map because every one of these case studies, like Zion, like Shawnee, like Denali, every one of them is absolutely unique. And we'll see that in kind of the language of, what creates national parks. what creates wilderness areas and stuff like that. Whereas a national recreation area, it's more about the activity and the people than a special and unique place, right? You can go off-road and four-wheeling a lot of places because, quite frankly, the technology of the vehicle sort of removes some of the difficulties. You know, some places are not suitable for hiking, but they work fine with off-roading.
And then another question I have about that exact same trip. Parts of that trail, when we looked at the map as a whole, like the paper maps we all had with us, and even on like the websites and everything before we went in and backpacked it, that whole area was considered federal wilderness area, like National Park Service wilderness area.
Mhm.
But once we actually began hiking through, there were stretches on the trail where there were signage where we were we're leaving federal
Yes.
ground and going into private land.
Yes.
And to close all the gates and everything behind us.
Mm-hmm.
But on the map, it's all considered, on the map, it's all delineated as federal. Is
Okay.
that because I know we talked about it briefly.
Completely
also.
normal.
Okay.
Yeah. Working as intended. All right, haven't forgot about going outside. Just want to take a look at the map.
Oh, no, we're good, Dad.
Let's see.
We'll learn to go outside soon. We gotta do our homework first.
All right, so let's take a look at.
I can't because of silviculture, and I got stats with Joaquin afterwards. It scared the shit out of me. They'll probably think like, oh shit, great barbecue. So that's so racist, but it's true.
Emma, wake up.
That's true.
Screw it.
Did you understand the war pretty well? Okay. We'll tag team.
At first, hell no, I had to watch the YouTube videos and stuff.
Okay.
Which were
We're in stats together, only because I don't know how
Is
you.
it the math stat?
No, it's ag stats.
which has nothing to do with welfare.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There you go, National Boy.
All right, so here we are at Giant City. Sorry, the projector's not freezing. Zoom out a little bit. Head over towards basically Grand Canyon. Go a little bit north, a little bit west of that, and Grand Canyon is essentially just south of the border between Arizona and Utah. All right. And it is a big ditch. As you can see, the Kaibab and Coconino National Forests on the north and south rim. North rim. It's dry, juniper, kind of scrubby, almost desert, semi-arid land cover. And Zion is largely the same. It's relatively high elevation. So south rim's 7,500 feet, north rim's up to about 9,500 feet.
Jesus, those are tall.
Yeah, almost 2 miles in the air.
Yeah.
You don't think about like the top of the ditch being that high, but it absolutely can be.
The crazy thing too is when you're at
It
the
gets
south.
snow there in June sometimes.
When you're on the south rim, the lower rim, and you look across, the north rim looks like it's on the same level as you. There's actually like 2,000 foot difference.
So we got
Depth
Canada,
perception
Utah.
to the max.
And continuing a bit west and north still, we have Zion National Park, which is a canyon system set up like a very, very tiny tributary canyon of the Grand Canyon. It's the Virgin River instead of the Colorado. The difference is at the Grand Canyon we have all the development, all that stuff at the top. So the wilderness area is down in the bottom of the Grand Canyon. And it's tough to manage that as wilderness. We'll talk about helicopters later on in the semester. At Zion, it's the opposite. Here's Springdale, the gateway community, kind of at the bottom center of the screen there. It's a little, like,
You go over
dirtbag
12
climber, let's go rent a Humvee and a machine gun kind of a place.
Yeah,
And Yeah, it's a fun little town. Pretty expensive to live in. Houses go there for a couple $1,000,000 up to.
We pass signs all the time.
Because it's tiny, and it's the only spot you can stick a house. It's by a river, and also by a major national park. So the upcountry, in contrast to Grand Canyon, the upcountry at Zion is where you have the wilderness, the backcountry. So that's all this green, flattish looking stuff. This is basically tableland or mesa type geography. All right, so we're on sandstone. This drains out pretty well, and the soft sandstone gets incised or cut by river channel of, in this case, the Virgin River, and it is very channelized. So at the upper section, the narrows, above the area of rock formation called the Temple of Sinawaba, the Virgin River goes into essentially a super tight maze of slot canyons with walls that are up to about 1,800 feet high. So you can be 40, 50 feet wide at the bottom and 1,800 feet high, like 0 minutes per day of sunlight reaching the bottom in some of these places for sure. Very, very cool. Pretty burly hike if you get any kind of flash flooding, which in a highly channelized system like this, these flash floods are regularly fatal if anybody's caught in there. So the Park Service manages that hike with a very, very tight ironclad reservation system. You are not going in there, at least from the top, where you don't have any easy exfiltration, except to get all the way out the bottom. If you get crapped out the bottom by a flash flood, you know,
You're screwed.
they might find chunks of your body. Typically not. So, so this is kind of the space that Nash is talking about backpacking in. The upcountry just above, upslope of that channel system.
So that's 1,200, 1,800 feet up in the air then pretty much?
Mhm.
From the bottom,
bottom,
yeah,
from
the
the bottom,
elevation
yeah,
is
yeah.
much higher, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, 4,500 to 5,000 feet.
Right, but I'm just
There's a
saying,
lot.
like, you're at the first range point, like
Yeah.
going up,
Yeah, the local range is
So
up
we
to
did,
about 1,800 feet.
we did, I forgot the trailhead we started at, but we went into Hop Valley and then we left on, gosh,
Hillary Cyrus called, he wants those jeans back.
we went in on Hop Valley and I don't know if we left, I don't know if I have a timestamp. Got out. We came out on, Kolob Canyon Road, remember, and it was closed. We had to hike down the road.
Alright, so there's Kolob Canyon Road.
Yeah.
It's that little trace in there. And as you can see, right outside of the border, we have some flatter, dry, sort of super marginal farmland. Like you can ranch here if you're really trying, and if you kind of squint and don't care about the results too much.
There's a lot of that in the West.
There's
It's
a
like,
lot.
why are you guys farming here?
Yeah. It's the American way, buddy. You know, cheap beef. So, here we have a complex landscape of wilderness, highly regulated canyon travel, super duper developed front country action out of Colorado City, Springdale, all the spots that, so Springdale's kind of right in the middle of the map here. It's a gateway community. This is the recreation opportunity spectrum in action. There's a couple of large designated wilderness areas run by the Bureau of Land Management. Totally different agency, totally different mission, but they also get tasked with wilderness areas outside of Zion, but they don't connect. But there's some basically very lightly developed ranching and farmland in between. So you can string together a trip into and out of the area, and it's a pretty good deal. If we look for something like the Holy Guacamole area, where we look for petrified wood.
That was cool.
Strip by lightning. Petrified wood strip by lightning.
No, it's just fossilized wood. Where you have like, you can still see the like rings and like the individual wood fibers in the rock.
Oh, cool.
This pip on the map is part of square land survey system, and it's like 150 yards from the border of Zion on this side, so the southeast side, no, southwest side of the park.
Which
So,
board?
this is Bureau of Land Management land. 150 yards over, federal felony to remove petrified wood from Zion National Park. Right here, and that area is wilderness as well.
150 feet?
Right here, you can pull up an RV and stay for like, what is it?
Next 2 weeks.
2 weeks, and then if you move,
Forest
like,
Service is 2 weeks.
if
I
you
don't know
move
yet.
like at all, like move your RV another 20 feet,
You're
stay
good.
for another 2 weeks. So you have a lot of folks pulling up to spots like this and just kind of spending their summer or a year or something like that, and just kind of bouncing around a little bit. And you can do all kinds of stuff. It's kind of a 4-wheel drive experience, even just to get up there, right? So you got to get up this not at all well-maintained road, and you can see how steep that is. Like we go up that in the university buses.
They ain't gonna
Well, we
make
test the
it.
brake hydraulics. It's fine. It's fine. They got plenty of horsepower.
It was good.
But my point is, if we just have wilderness without a super low-key, barely regulated area like Holy Guacamole right next to it, people are going to go a little bit crazy. Because we're going to check that box really well for those wilderness guys and gals, but everybody else is feeling kind of left out. And when people feel kind of left out, they take matters into their own hands with a pair of bolt cutters and go explore the wilderness on their 4-wheelers. So, this ROS idea for wilderness is super important. Super important. We want to make sure that guys like Nash can string together a pretty cool wilderness trip, and you can do it internal to just the wilderness, or you can plan a route that is a public-private hello. And you sign a memorandum of understanding with landowners, and it's like, hey, we want to have random strangers from all over the world running around on your property. Hey, is that cool? And for some of the landowners, they're like, no thanks, fam. And for others, it's like, okay, I'm okay with that. Could I tap into your expertise as land managers, as this huge federal agency? I'm trying to run this little ranch over here, and kind of inherited it from somebody I don't know what I'm doing. Can you kind of exchange some services in exchange for access to my land and stuff like that? So, this helps us out. So let's head outside a little bit and see what this looks like, even just around campus. We'll be able to see exactly this. Question?
Yeah, so do they get paid or anything when the government asks to just use their land, or do they just kind of ask please and hope that they get, I guess?
You don't do anything for free, son. Especially with the federal.
It's different in different situations.
Well, I wouldn't, that doesn't mean other people don't.
It's a scratch my back, I scratch your back.
Generally, the federal government is not trying to get into kind of a tenancy situation, like where they're basically paying rent
Yeah.
to allow people on there. They'll typically do stuff instead like, hey, we own the 500,000 acres that butts up to your land on this side. If you sign the special land use document called an easement, we'll help you find a buyer for the right to roam across this land, to put and maintain trails on it, stuff like that. Like a not-for-profit that just like buys that part of the property or that right to the property, and you still have everything else. So you can get some money and still do the stuff you're doing. Or we'll do stuff like, and this is a big thing on the Shawnee because there's a ton of holes on the map in the Shawnee, like individual people's farms. One of our old graduates, a guy named Justin Dewey, worked on land swap legal agreements where they'll give you a choice piece of real estate that literally nobody else is allowed to buy, carved out of the Shawnee National Forest. If your family owns this 40-acre farm right in the middle of the Shawnee that they've been trying to do like burns around but not through and stuff like that for years, and that can be a really nice thing. Like they can hook you up with some pretty good property in exchange for maybe that old hill farm is still pretty blown out from the Dust Bowl 100 years ago, and you're just kind of not making a lot with it. Give you some prime land instead, and everybody kind of wins.
Land swap makes a lot of sense for Shawnee, where it's so segmented.
Yes.
Like, try to make it more contiguous.
Right.
There's also instances where whenever the government seizes these lands, specifically there's one I'm thinking in the Smoky Mountains Wilderness.
Mm-hmm.
But those spots we went through are private land. I was curious, if you knew if they were easement type things or
After
if
looking
they were
for the
a
tax
lease type of thing. Where once those families or people pass part of the service,
Yeah, so it can be anything above or below that. Like an easement is when, I don't know, let's say I own some property right next to SIU that would be awesome for forestry research or something like that. But I kind of still want to live there, but I don't care if the forestry professors are doing a bunch of stuff, back in the woods, and I'm never going to see it or hear it or whatever, and I'm a little bit older, not quite as mobile. I'm never going to get back into those woods. They're just kind of sitting there as part of my property.
Free maintenance.
I could sell to SIU or to a third party, again, one of those not-for-profits, just the right to develop research plots in the forest. So I still have residency, I still have the surface water, the surface mining rights, surface livestock development, putting up more buildings, right away, the right to cut in a road or driveway through my property. I carry all of that stuff. And then I also get a check for just that ability to run research plots in the other part. So that's awesome. But when you sell that right to some third party not-for-profit, they're playing for keeps, literally forever.
Yeah.
The whole idea is we're going to buy this and we're going to hang on to it for the next gazillion generations until the collapse of the United States, so that everybody can benefit from whatever that transaction is. So you hear the term conservation easements.
Yeah. Like if
A
you
lot
have
of
national
people
land,
have
they
been
use
getting into
it.
that, yeah.
They give you tax benefits and
Yeah,
write-offs.
huge tax shelter.
So if you sell the rights, the next people that move in
They can't
also
buy it.
don't have those rights?
Yep.
Right. But they can buy the property for cheaper because that value in that particular right
It's down.
isn't part of the transaction for you
Part
as
of
the new
key
person.
value of
Yeah.
the land. Yeah.
So it's good for the current tenant, but it also, because land just gets more expensive and we're earning less and less, per dollar kind of thing with inflation and wage erosion, stuff like that since the 1970s, that also benefits the next buyer because it can bring some sky-high properties down, and what you're buying. It's this, the Nature Conservancy owns the perpetual right to develop anything on this parcel of wildland. And the only way I could ever afford to buy it is because that's already been sort of locked up by them. And, I don't have to worry about the previous owner, wrecking the shit out of this place because, they're the ones that sold off that right to do that anyway. So, it can work really well. It's awesome for hunting clubs and stuff like that. You see a lot of that kind of thing in terms of keeping the cost of that down for all the members and stuff. So, all right. So I want you to think back to the year 1900.
Yeah, we were there.
Super easy, right?
Yeah.
I remember 1990.
Yeah, I guess.
Most of us are going to be living on farms. Most of us are going to be using literal horsepower, oxen power, maybe a kind of janky steam-powered tractor if we're super bougie at that time.
We're still killing our chicken.
Yeah. We probably got a backwood lot, something like that for occasional timber production, mostly firewood, stuff like that. And if I'm not on a farm, I'm in a city like Chicago, getting sucked into the gears of some huge industrial factory machine, trying to make shirts for everybody or something.
Sausages.
Yeah, making the sausage, right? And becoming the sausage occasionally.
Yeah.
Okay? And that's how we do
Someone wrote
back
it
at
down.
that time.
Having a 40-year-old, 5-year-old, you know.
And so our sense of the natural world at that time is going to be a lot more full of wildlife and full of difficulty. So we have kind of the myths and legends of American early heroes or whatever, like Daniel Boone,
Davy Crockett.
and so on and so forth. And those guys, we have stories about them in the way that we don't have stories today about backpackers,
Unless they go
because
missing.
it's different,
It's
right?
far different.
It's different when you have cotton or wool clothing and maybe some halfway water resistant-ish, like waxed canvas duck. So basically Carhartts with a bunch of wax in it for your tent, stuff like that. And you'd use that until the mold starts eating the cotton fiber and, you know, get another one. So wildland recreation wasn't really a thing for a lot of people in quite the same way we think of it now. All right, so that early 1900s milieu was kind of the situation in which the guys, most of the guys and gals, who started developing this idea of like wilderness as a thing to like protect. That's the scene they came up in, as we'd say these days. Yeah, John.
What
Question.
about like city people going to the beach? Would that count as recreation?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but I'm just saying like.
But it's not wildland recreation. Yeah, it's
Right,
like
in a way,
early
though, it
boardwalk
is.
with the Ferris wheel, right?
Sort of, but that's like I'm thinking more like on like Indiana Dunes.
Okay.
Like, there's nothing there but the dunes. You know, like there's nothing but trail parks. There's no Ferris wheels. I mean, you see the Gary steel mills in the distance, but that's it.
Nice.
So like you just have sand. Would that count as nature-ish in a way? As a
Yes.
recreation for back then is what I'm getting at.
But think how narrow that, let's say, 500-yard thick ribbon of shoreline is relative to the 300 miles of farmland on the other side of the road, you know?
Right, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying for like city people who couldn't get out,
Yes.
that was their only escape for rec unless they went to the art institutes to stare at paintings.
Yeah, so Indiana Dunes, Sleeping Bear Dunes, places like that, Starved Rock State Park. That's kind of the urban proximate stuff that most people have access to. And that's basically as far as most people's imaginations went in terms of recreation. Like, planning backpacking trips wasn't really a thing as far as we can uncover in the old records because, man, like, we don't have freeze-dried food. We don't have Mylar space-age food packaging where you can have something shelf-stable for, 5 years on an MRE, something like that?
They didn't
10 years,
really-
maybe?
Yeah, they didn't really do that backpacking as we do today. Their backpacking was like, dude, we're getting the fuck out of here. Let's go backpacking because we don't have a car.
Yeah, the expiration date's more of a guideline.
Yeah, I mean, I think people that lived more west in rural agriculture would just sometimes, we're going to go hunting. And that's their backpacking trip or
Yeah.
ride their horse
Mm-hmm.
for a week or two.
Yeah, for sure. So the United States Cavalry is still running most national parks in the year 1900. Or sort of loose, thrown together or ad hoc coalitions of like stay foresters and volunteers and folks who are just like, well, we have this big park here, kind of,
Let's walk through it.
we'll blade out the front access road every once in a while. We can do that with our horse team.
The loggers.
Yeah, exactly. And we're basically looking out for poachers, and that's about it. So, the idea of wilderness is kind of taking root around this time with guys like John Muir, like right at the turn of the century into 1900. And they put together a pretty gnarly idea at that time. Before we have stuff like synthetic clothes and like silver impregnated underwear that kind of keeps that Fremunda cheese under check, right? They're saying, why don't we take some of the biggest, gnarliest to get through areas and like set them up so that it's like a primary goal of the place to kind of get there and get through there and just explore and throw yourself into a wild space where, you know, you might not come out.
It's you against nature.
As the cities are growing, there's a sense in the United States that, man, we don't want to make the same mistake that Europe did, right? There's a sense that, okay, yeah, France kind of helped us in the Revolutionary War, and we appreciate that, but we also kind of like throw our hands up when the French Revolution happens, and we're like, oh, we're too new to help you guys back.
Sorry,
Bye.
you're on your own.
But there's a sense across Europe, of Europe across America, like, man, these guys and gals, they're living in these 1,000-year-old cities, and, you know, we got something different going on here. We're gonna lose something if we do what they have decided to do, kind of settle into these old medieval cities and just kind of be
Medievalish?
domesticated, kind of neutered and stuff like that. So the idea of wilderness was kind of a part of my French, but for the early 1900s, when folks started talking about this stuff, it was punk as fuck to talk about, okay, you know, we've been working real hard at mowing everything down, extracting all the timber value, getting ranching set up out west and stuff like that with water divisions and all that. What if we kept the most wild places wild on purpose and went there for the fun of it? With our food that spoils right away and our cotton clothes that is hygroscopic, it holds water against your skin and cools you off 40 to 100 times faster, so hypothermia. You know, like we had canning for food preservation at that time, and that's kind of about it.
Hey, it worked for, you know, those dudes who went to Antarctica and never came back. Shelton or Shackleton.
Yeah.
Well, they also did like a lot of salted meats.
Well, they
Like
also
salt
lived at
curing.
30 years old too. So they
Salt
didn't
and
have
sugar
much
curing,
going for
yeah.
'em.
Okay. So, as we look around this landscape right here, for anybody growing up on the farm, there's nothing wild about this, right? I mean, this is scrubby, early successional forest that we do some mechanical clearing of every once in a while when the university kind of gets around to it, because they won't let Ruffner do a good burn. Because
I know.
So
one
lame.
year
so
they
much
got a
more
little bit of
burn.
smoke in the
We
library,
ripped
and the librarians were not cool with that.
We ripped the shit
Who
out of
wasn't
this.
cool with it?
The library.
The library, yeah.
You know, fuck those.
They
fucking
smoked
nerds.
out the library. 'Cause the wind was going that way, and all the fans and ACs are on that
intakes
side
up
of the
there, yeah.
library.
Fucking
So,
nerds.
Yeah, come on.
there's not much access to the wilds for even the folks who are closer to the wilds, out on these farms and stuff like that. And folks started noticing, okay, well, we're about to tip over into a European style of things, and we think that's bad. So, let's intentionally kind of have some places that are set aside for what we call today hard mode. You know? Like, some areas big enough to absorb a 2-week-long pack trip. And we intentionally, we'll cut some trails in, but we're not going to make them nice. They're going to be rocky and rooty, and you're going to get lost, and you're going to eat shit and fall into the river when you're crossing it, and so on and so forth. So, look around. This is the landscape that kind of suggested we need something better than this. And this, I feel, is a lot better than most of us growing up in suburbia, right? So,
Except for the dick trees.
Yeah.
except for the dick trees.
Yeah, those are kind of.
For those of you listening at home in our audio recording here, we have tree graffiti of one kind of small and one impressively large phallus on this light-skinned, thin-skinned tree. So,
It looks like a beach, to be honest with you, the tree. So it's easy to carve in.
I think part of that, in terms of like not wanting to fall into like the European kind of way,
Mhm.
I also think part of that is just like
They did hunts and shit.
Well, in like America, I feel like from when it became a country and we started expanding.
Yep.
The expansion rate was like what we just said. All of those like frontiersmen and those what we would consider like pretty crazy dudes.
Mm-hmm.
Those kind of set a precedent of like an American spirit towards like the environment in the sense of like these places are super dangerous, but exploring them is like what you got to do.
Yeah.
And I think right now it's like we're recreating a sense of that. And like you said earlier, it's like there's a lot of backpackers today. Nobody knows them like the way we all know, like Daniel Boone.
It's not exceptional anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
But I think the only thing,
Unless you
I think
put your
there are moments where it is, but
we're
it's
trying
like
it
the
out.
far extreme of what we can do today. And what I mean by that is
Now
like
we have to push the envelope
a
even
lot. Like
even further, which is a different problem for
super
wreck
intense,
management.
like
Hiking
rock
naked.
climbing, or like alpinists, or those dudes who were sending like free solo climbing of 14,000 foot ice frozen mountain.
Yeah.
Like we know those guys.
The Alex
For the most
Honnoldts
part.
of the world.
Yeah.
Right.
I think Steve Irwin might be close.
Yeah.
Traveled all over. And
Yeah.
like,
And he was doing it for
fucked
like
with
yeah.
animals.
He wrestled some crocodiles that were pretty legendary, Mike.
Yeah. Versus in
And then he got stung in the heart.
Dude,
What
not
a way to
too
go.
soon. It's still too soon, bro.
So in places like
You're going to hell for that.
what is now the People's Republic of China, there's continuous civilization there for around 5,000 years. Japan has a couple of thousand years of continuous settlement, and different dynasties come and go and stuff like that. But all of that exploration stuff, they pretty well finished checking that box a couple of thousand years ago. And since that time, had sort of lost something that was still kind of seen as an opportunity around these parts.
Yeah.
So, we'll pick it up there on Tuesday. Sound good?
Sounds gravy.
All right. Thanks, boys.
Something like